Hello and welcome to another video, and today is going to be a bit of a serious one. So basically, after quite a lot of deliberation, I've decided I'm going to stop cutting. Like, I feel like the last few months have just taken their toll. Like, I've been cutting a lot of the time. I spent most of my waking hours like cutting, and I feel like I've had to sacrifice so much. Like, I've missed family events, I've missed social events, I've definitely neglected my family along the way, and the truth is, I don't even know if I'm that good at cutting. Like, I mean, like, I've done quite well there, but like, Celine Dion is a fantastic artist. I don't want to not do her justice. Like, how am I even going to begin to get around those fingers with these scissors? I just don't know if it's worth it. Jokes! Although Celine Dion is an incredibly talented female vocalist, and to be honest, probably my biggest role model in this world. But on a serious note, I am genuinely going to be serious today. I'm going to be talking about a serious diet-related issue that's affected me quite significantly over the last few years, and I imagine millions of other people. People don't really talk about it so much, particularly like on YouTube. I mean, essentially it boils down to like an eating disorder. Yeah, so it's going to be quite intense. So, as I always do before I start, I'm going to ask for two small things in return. Drop the video a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Let's go. Okay, we're in now. Before I start, let me clear up one quick thing. Yes, I am sweaty. I'm sitting in the hottest room in my house. All the walls are white. There's freaking loads of windows. It's like 30 degrees outside. This room is like a freaking greenhouse, right? So despite what your instincts might be telling you, no, I'm not a pervert, I'm just really hot. Okay, let's get on with it. So, like the majority of people who train or lift weights, I've spent a lot of my time bulking or cutting, particularly bulking over the last few years. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with the processes of cutting and bulking, cutting essentially means being in a calorie deficit, so eating less calories than you need in order to lose weight, and bulking is the opposite, so eating more calories than you need, being in a calorie surplus in order to gain weight. And the reason people would do these two things is that bulking ultimately allows you to get bigger and stronger, right? If you want to build muscle and you want to get stronger, unless you are a beginner, it's very hard, almost impossible to do so unless you are in a calorie surplus, unless you're giving your body more calories than it needs. And conversely, if you want to lose weight, if you want to lose fat, so you want to look shredded, you want to look lean, that's only going to happen if you're in a calorie deficit, right? So what tends to happen is that people will bulk for a period of time, build some muscle, get some strength, and then when they're happy with the amount of strength and muscle they've attained, and they feel like they've maybe put on a bit too much fat, they'll then cut, lose some of that fat, try and hang on to as much of their muscle and strength as they can, and then basically just repeat that cycle over and over again. And on the surface it seems fine, right? It seems logical. Like, I mean, it is logical. Ultimately, to be like at a high level in the vast majority of sports, you're going to have to manipulate your diet in some way. You can't just eat what you want and not think about it. You know, it requires like some regulation on that front, because otherwise you're not going to get to that top level. But, and this is a big but, and I do like big buts,
and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't.
There is a huge dark side, something that's kind of not really spoken about in the fitness industry when it comes to cutting and bulking, particularly people that take cutting and bulking to like quite an extreme level, and it essentially boils down to an eating disorder or like various eating disorders, and I've experienced it in a pretty intense fashion firsthand on numerous occasions. So I feel like it's a good time to talk about this, because I think where I'm an online coach and I get an abundance of clients asking about bulking and asking about cutting and seeking advice on that front, particularly like teenagers, I just think it's really important that people are aware of the risks and the side effects of bulking and particularly cutting on your health, because it's not as simple as just, you know, switching your brain one way and the other and bulking for a bit and then cutting for a bit and that's it, going back to normal. Like, there are long-lasting repercussions and in some cases, you know, pretty extreme health risks when it comes to doing these things. Right, let's start with cutting, because I think of the two, cutting is the one that carries the most risks and like potential negative side effects, and also probably the most commonly like used method. I think ultimately more people will spend more of their time in a cut than they will in a bulk, just because people don't want to get fat basically. Now, I'm aware of lots of people's kind of cutting related horror stories, but I'm going to give you my own experience because obviously I'm me and therefore I can kind of talk about it in more depth. Now, it's going to be like a sit down chat. I haven't scripted it. I'm just going to kind of talk to you about my experiences in the hope that if any of you are thinking about cutting or bulking, this kind of opens your eyes to the risks and the fact that it's not something that should be taken lightly. You shouldn't just jump into a cut or a bulk without seriously thinking about it and seriously thinking about the potential implications to your like psychological welfare and your health, right? So, I've cut a couple of times recently, but generally I've been in a bulk for the last few years, right? Because I was a powerlifter previously. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, I used to be an athlete. I used to do long jump and triple jump, and that obviously required me to be a lot lighter than I am currently. Now, back in those days, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, well, I thought I did, but I didn't. When it came to like nutrition, I didn't really know what I was doing. So what I would essentially do is just cut from Monday to Friday, compete, eat loads of crap, and then go again. Now, during the summer months, I'll be competing every weekend for pretty much, I guess, like 3 months. So yeah, it would get to say like May time, and I think, right, I'm competing in a month, my first competition of the year. I'm just going to eat less food and lose loads of weight. Now, I had no idea about, you know, like macronutrients and like regulating those kind of things, so I basically just ate less food. A lot of the time, I imagine my protein intake was very, very low, so the weight I lost would have been like a lot of water and a lot of muscle mass. But yeah, my weight would drop. I'd get, you know, significantly lighter than I was in the winter. I'd do my first competition, and I'd say, right, I'm gonna have like a cheat meal. I'm gonna go and eat like a nice KFC, and then the next day, the Sunday, I'm gonna start again, eat nothing, get light again, and compete and carry on. Now, 2 issues with this. Firstly, like I said, I wasn't cutting properly, right? I had no idea what I was doing. I was cutting very aggressively, so I was losing weight way too fast, and my protein level definitely wouldn't have been high enough. So like I said, I would have been losing a lot of muscle, but that's like nothing compared to the bigger issue. And what I'm talking about in regards to eating disorders is that what happened is that over the weeks, that one small cheat meal just gradually increased and increased in size. And I went from not being fussed to like craving it, you know, to a ridiculous extent. So for the first couple of competitions, I would finish my competition, I wouldn't even be that fussed about food. I might be hungry, but cravings weren't really there. As it got through the summer and through the competitions, I would spend like, I'm not exaggerating, every waking hour thinking about food. I remember consistently, like throughout July, towards the end of my like triple jumping career, I'd be having dreams. Like genuinely, I'd wake up at like 3 AM and have been having like an intense, this sounds weird, intense dream about like Krispy Kreme donuts. I was literally fantasizing about eating donuts like it was absolutely absurd. And it would get to the point where I knew I was competing that day, and like I was more excited about being able to eat food afterwards than I was the actual competition. Like I remember going to the British Champ, which for me was a really big deal, and I was genuinely, I remember in the morning I was planning out my route back home, like what service stations I could go past to pick up Krispy Kremes. I wasn't even thinking about the competition, and that's absolutely outrageous, but that's what it does to you. Like as soon as you tell yourself you can't have something, you want it, and as soon as you cut, as soon as you drop your calories that aggressively, your body's going to go nuts. And the second you allow yourself, you know, some leeway, you're going to massively overshoot and you're going to go crazy and you're going to have no control. And it's very common to hear people, particularly bodybuilders who have just competed, explain, you know, the sensation of not having control. They literally cannot stop themselves from eating, and I can vouch for that. I've experienced that so many times. Like I said, what started off as one cheat meal on like a Saturday evening after the competition would end up being like all of Saturday evening. I'd go to bed really late so I could eat more food, all of Sunday, and then probably all of Monday. It ended up spilling out into the next week. And it would just be outrageous. I wouldn't even be hungry. I'd be like, my stomach would hurt, but I'd still have that urge to eat crap. So I'd go and eat, you know, buy more cakes. I can remember like being sick, like towards the end of the summer, where I was doing it so aggressively and eating so much crap. Like I can't even imagine how many calories I was consuming, but it would have been, in a whole day of doing that, easily 10,000 calories, easily. And I can remember, like, I couldn't even lie down because my stomach hurt so much. I'd be vomiting, where I'd literally physically, you know, force-fed myself so much stuff, because even though I felt full and my body was telling me I was full, like my brain just had this, there was this underlying like voice in my head saying, you need to eat more crap. Like, and I guess part of that comes down to, I knew from the Monday or the Tuesday or whenever I was going to be cutting those calories again, and so my brain was telling me, right, you need to get the calories in now while you can, because from Tuesday you're going to be eating friggin' soup for 3 meals a day. And the thing is, on the surface you wouldn't even know that was happening. Like I guess my friends and family knew I was going a bit crazy on the eating front, but I mean, they probably weren't aware that I was being sick. I don't think so anyway. Like, you know, I would have looked good. I was pretty shredded. I was pretty lean. My performance was quite good because my training was going well. But, you know, my performance was good in spite of that, as opposed to, you know, because of that, obviously, you know. So, in more recent times, like the last year, where I've been bodybuilding and I've done like, I did my first serious cut like a few months ago. And, you know, obviously now I have a much better understanding of nutrition, so I planned things out more. I made sure my protein intake was high. I made sure I cut gradually, so I wasn't losing any more than, you know, like, say half a pound to a pound a week at most. But still, I mean, after 2 months of cutting, like, it was going back to the triple jumping days. Like, I remember I was craving stuff. The cravings were so intense, like it would kind of, you know, dominate my thoughts for large periods of the day. That's all I could think about. And then again, when I finished my cut, like, I had like a photo shoot at the end of the cut, and rather than being excited for the photo shoot and, you know, how shredded I could get, I was excited to go and buy and eat McDonald's afterwards, okay? And that's what it does to you. Like, you just end up in that perpetual cycle of restricting and then going crazy. And the irony is, going crazy like inevitably cancels out all the work you've put in up to that point. You end up going back to square one if you go too aggressive. And like I said, although I did do it gradually and incrementally, because, you know, I didn't even get that shredded. Like, you can go back and watch my videos, like, I was lean, but I wasn't like mega shredded. But, you know, by my standards, that was quite a long time. Like, it was basically like a 6 or 7, maybe like an 8-week stint of really cutting my calories and really depriving myself of food, because I normally eat quite a lot. So even though I had done it gradually, I still, come the end of that period, was on a massive rebound. And if you're the kind of person that I am, I think most people are, like, they don't like eating one little thing. Like, if you're hungry and someone says, or you're craving, and someone says, I'll have like 1 block of chocolate, I'd rather eat like nothing than have 1 block. You know, for me, it's either the whole bar or nothing. I'm not the kind of person that can eat one little bit and be satisfied. And I think a lot of people share that mindset. And if you do have that mindset, then cutting, particularly cutting for a long period of time or cutting aggressively, you know, you are asking for problems. And so, yeah, although we're not talking about, like, you know, anorexia and bulimia and those kinds of levels of eating disorder, this still is, you know, in essence an eating disorder, because if you spend every waking second like fantasizing about food, and you do things, again, I would do this, I would kind of secretly eat. So if I knew I was cutting and people around me knew I was cutting, I'd go and eat like late at night, or, you know, I'd creep off and go and eat some chocolate when no one was looking, because I felt like it was, at least that way, I couldn't justify it, but at least I could kind of keep it to myself and try and kind of resolve it, you know, eat less like the next day. But if you're eating food secretly, deliberately, and you're, you know, obsessing over food and you can't wait to go and eat whatever to that level, then that is an eating disorder. That is a very, very unhealthy relationship to have with food. And that is, like I said, the risk that if you cut, you know, that is, I would say the vast majority of people that have run like a decent cut, or, you know, fairly extreme cut, at some point have experienced what I'm talking about. Maybe not on this level, but definitely to some level. And like I said, the problem is that if you keep doing it, it just gets exacerbated. Like, those symptoms will get worse and worse and worse. Your binges will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you just develop this super unhealthy relationship with food. So I think, like I said, you know, I'm not saying don't cut, because in a lot of aspects it is, you know, it's essential to make progress, but just be very, very mindful and put things in place as much as you can to avoid that. Right, moving on to bulking, and what I'm going to do now is I'll talk about my experiences with bulking. Then at the end of the video, I'll give you some kind of tips and pointers, some bits of advice that will help you minimize the negative side effects of both cutting and bulking, so you can kind of take something away from this video, aside from just thinking, Matt, you're a weirdo. So bulking, now this is less of a problem area, just because, like, it's less common. Basically, people, like I said at the start, people spend less of their time bulking because people are scared of getting fat. There's like a negative stigma attached to bulking, when actually, you know, in essence, it's very, very effective, and it's basically essential to make progress. Also, because most people don't have a crazy fast metabolism, so most people can bulk for a fairly long period of time. They can continue gaining weight, and they can basically enjoy the process. Like, they're not having to force feed themselves. But there are some people, and I am included in this, that have a very fast metabolism. Therefore, after a period of time of bulking, you need to eat, you know, a huge amount of calories in order to gain weight. So I, on several occasions in the past, have been in a bulk where I've had to eat 6,000 calories in order to gain weight. Now, I can't explain this to you enough, but if you want to hate food and ruin your relationship with food, like for a long period of time, try eating 6,000 calories a day. Even for like a week, for 2 weeks, try doing it, and trust me, you will hate food. Like, it is horrendous. So the most aggressive bulk I've done is going back a couple of years when I was a powerlifter, and I was lifting in the IPF, and the weight classes were, I was in the 105 kilogram class, and I weighed like, I forget, I think like mid to high 90s. I think I was around 95, 96 kilograms. I wanted to get heavier, to get stronger. So I basically, you know, if I'm going to be in the 105 class, it makes sense to fill it out, right? There's no point weighing 97 kilos, because you're going to be up against guys that are like 7, 8 kilos heavier than you. So I decided I wanted to get up as close to 105 kilos as I could. So I think I had about 4 or 5 months maybe to gain that weight, and I went nuts. Again, going back to what I said earlier on about doing things incrementally. At the time, I kind of was aware of it, but I was kind of lazy, I was impatient, so I went from 0 to, you know, a lot of calories very quickly, so I gained weight quickly straight away. What happened then is that I was eating loads of calories. It no longer was enough to gain weight. I think I got up to about 100, 101 kilos. I still needed to be heavier, and therefore I had to go to the next level. So at this point, This is where I'm talking about the 6,000 calories. I was doing things like putting olive oil in my protein shakes. Now, if you've never tried it, like, don't, but just out of interest, it's quite funny. Like, put olive oil in your protein shake. I was having like, I think 2 or 3 tablespoons. It is absolutely vile. It's revolting. You can feel it like in your throat. Just the thought of it now is making me cringe. I was putting coconut oil, melting that in my shakes. I was just eating huge amounts of butter, just doing crazy, disgusting, unhealthy things. Because ultimately, you know, try and get 6,000 calories of clean, healthy food. It's not going to happen. You haven't got time. Like it's physically impossible, you know, unless you have a crazy capacity for food. So I was doing those things. That in itself, obviously, is very, very, very unhealthy from a physical sense, but from like a psychological sense, like I said, the damage it did was that it just killed my, firstly my gag reflex, right? So what would happen is that because towards the end of that bulk, like for the last kind of 2 to 3 weeks of that bulk before the British Champs, I was being sick like pretty much every day. I remember me and Sid went to stay in a nice hotel, like I forget, it might have actually been at the competition, but we were in a nice hotel. We were having breakfast in the morning, they had a really nice buffet, and I'm sat there, she's having like enjoying her breakfast. I was cramming like 50 million calories of food in, and I had to go and throw up. Like I went to the bathroom and I threw up everywhere. And yeah, it's kind of, obviously it's not a nice thing to do like when you're out with people, but that was a daily occurrence because I was physically eating so much food, like my gag reflex couldn't handle it, couldn't tolerate it, and I was being sick consistently. And the more I did that, like it's funny, you think that the more you bulk, the easier it would get because you'd get used to it, but for me it was the opposite. Like I was finding it harder and harder to eat food, and it got to the point where like I wasn't even, you know, I'd eat a reasonably big meal, not a crazy sized meal, but you know, I would feel sick. I'd get halfway through and I'd be feeling sick. I wouldn't feel full up, but my gag reflex was going and I couldn't eat because I knew that if I ate it and I was sick, I'd have to start from scratch. That was the other thing. Like I was eating huge meals. You get to the end of the meal, you desperately try and hold it down. I'd be sick, and then it was not only, it's like a double header, because not only have you been sick, which that sucks, you know, you've also then lost all of those calories you've been desperately forcing down. It's just a horrible experience. I also at that time rather stupidly did some calorie challenges. I've done like a 25,000 calorie challenge and a 20 and a 15 and a 10. But again, that coupled with the bulking experience I was going through has like irreparably damaged my gag reflex. Even now to this day, like where I've cut, it's kind of minimized it, it's reduced it, but it's still there. Like I can eat a meal one day and be fine. The next day I can eat like a similar sized meal. I'm not full up, but I start feeling a bit sick, and I know that if I carry on eating it, I'm going to be sick. So that's a legacy of bulking for that long, and that's something that you need to be very mindful of if you are going to bulk aggressively and if you do have a very high metabolism. And again, what happens here is kind of the inverse to when you're cutting. Like if you've been bulking, or for me, when I was bulking that aggressively for that long, when the competition was over, or when I finally tell myself, yeah, you don't need to force feed anymore, I basically ate nothing. Like I remember on one occasion we went away to Malaysia for like 2 weeks, just at the end, that coincided with the end of my bulk. So I'd gone from force feeding, like, you know, throughout the day, every day, to then saying, right, you can eat what you want, don't worry about it. I lost something ridiculous, like a stone. I think I lost like 6 or 7 kilos in the space of 2 weeks just from that rebound, because like it's the opposite to a cut. When you come off a cut, you go nuts and eat loads. When I come off a bulk, I go nuts and eat nothing. So the problem there again is that because you're going for, you know, calories are going from such a high level to such a low level, after a while your metabolism will adapt to that, and then if you do decide that you want to lose weight, then it's going to be hard because you're already eating, you know, a relatively low number of calories. But plus losing weight that quickly is going to be like detrimental because it's going to be water, it's going to be muscle mass, it's not going to be the stuff you want to be losing. So like I said earlier, it's really, really important whatever you decide to do, whichever way you decide to go, you do it incrementally, you do it slowly over a long period of time, and you regulate it from day to day. But yeah, it's hard to say which is worse. Like I was thinking about it earlier, it's funny, I think cutting's probably, for most people, cutting is less enjoyable because ultimately people like eating food, right? So on a bulk, even though it's, you know, at times you have to force feed, it is still nice being able to, you know you can go out and eat what you want, not having to kind of deprive yourself. But at the same time, when I was bulking, when it was like I said, getting to the kind of the extremes of the bulk, like, you know when you eat a massive meal and you feel really, really sick? Like imagine having that feeling from waking up to going to bed. Like literally, I'm not exaggerating, literally having that feeling all day. I had that for probably 3 weeks towards the end of the bulk. Every single day, just feeling mildly sick and feeling pretty full up for the whole day, and still knowing you need to eat like 3, 4, 5 massive meals and loads of random crap like chocolate and cakes and pizza just to get those calories in. Like it isn't a very nice thing to do. And although, like I said, it's quite rare that people have to do that because most people don't have as high a metabolism. It's not very nice. But I guess in terms of like the health repercussions, the rebound of a cut is probably worse, because you, like I said, you will inevitably develop some kind of eating disorder, and you end up, like I said, doing things like secretly eating and just not being, you know, physically being unable to stop yourself from eating, just eating over and over again, even though you know you can feel your stomach's full, like it literally hurts at times, but you're still eating, you can't stop yourself eating. That's pretty like intense. So although the bulk side effects, the whole, you know, messed up gag reflex, and, you know, hating food at times, probably would take that over the rebound of a cut. But yeah, that's pretty much that as far as my experience goes. Like, I know it was just me talking about like things I've done, so I guess it's quite like selfish and egocentric. Like, I think it's quite useful and potentially like really important for people to know, because I think, like I said, I get lots of emails from, you know, like 15-year-olds saying, or even like I had a guy, like a 13-year-old email me and say about going on a cut. Now, I'm not talking about, you know, obviously if you're really overweight, of course go on a cut, eat less food, you know, get healthy, do more exercise, but these are skinny teenagers saying they want to cut to get a six-pack. Like, that's outrageous. Like, don't think about cutting, particularly at that age, and particularly if you're skinny. Just, you know, enjoy your life, like do sport, eat a healthy, balanced diet, and when you get older and you've done some research and you've given your body a chance to grow and develop, then you can start thinking about these things. But like I said, for the people that are thinking about them, that are in a genuine, you know, a situation where it could be warranted, like, I think it's important, like I said, you understand the risks and the side effects, and you can use my experiences I've just kind of shared with you there, to inform your decision and just make you aware of what could possibly happen. Because at least if you're aware of it, like when I was triple jumping, I didn't know that was going to happen to me, and there were times when I was like, you know, what am I doing? What is happening to me? Like, at least if you know about it and you're prepared for it, you can put some kind of contingencies, some things in place to kind of, yeah, prepare for it. But like I said, about in terms of like tips and things to minimize those side effects and to avoid them, obviously the first thing would be just don't bulk or cut. But like I said, I know that they are important and they are essential in some respects to make progress, so that's fair enough, you can do them. But I would recommend, like, and if it fits your macro approach, which basically means, like, if it fits your macros, is basically eating like a set number of calories and macronutrients. So saying, right, today I'm going to eat 3,000 calories, and of that it's going to be 200 grams of protein, 250 grams of carbs, and like 80 grams of fat. Or that probably didn't make sense, but whatever it is, you know, those, you have numbers in mind you need to hit, right? And you eat whatever you want, but you hit those numbers. So you say, right, I'm going to eat some pizza, that's fine, I can eat pizza, but as long as it, you know, there's the right amount of carbs, the right amount of fat, and the right amount of protein. Now, the downside of this is that if you don't know what you're doing, you might neglect your micronutrients. But the massive pro to this is that you're not depriving yourself of food. Like, as soon as you say to, I said this so many times, as soon as you say to yourself, I am never eating donuts again, or I'm not eating donuts for the next 6 months, I'm telling you, you are setting yourself up to fail. What's going to happen is you are going to eat donuts, and when you do, you're going to eat friggin' 50 donuts because you've been stopping yourself from doing it for so long. Like, you might not even like donuts that much, but as soon as you say to yourself, you can't have them, I'm never going to eat them, human nature dictates that you're going to want them more than anything else. So if it fits your macros, although you are regulating and you are, you know, eating things in moderation, you're not stopping, you're not ruling out any food. So that way there's that kind of novelty, that crazy kind of desire to eat something isn't there so much, because you can have it. Admittedly, you can't eat loads of it, but you can have it to an extent. So yeah, that is what I would recommend. And like I said, and I keep saying, what I'd also recommend is just make sure you don't take cutting and bulking lightly. Don't just because you see your favorite YouTuber or your favorite Instagram person like cutting or bulking for ages and ages, don't assume that's what you need to do. Like, make sure you've done the research, make sure you understand where you are, ask someone who's maybe more informed or more experienced than you for their advice, and make sure whatever you do, whichever way you decide to go, you do it gradually and incrementally and in moderation. Everything is about moderation. If you do something too quickly and too aggressively, ultimately there's that kind of slingshot effect, it's gonna come back to get you. So make sure, yeah, you are slow, you are patient, you are clever about it, and then that will minimize any potential side effects. But yeah, on that front, I'm going to end the video. I'm going to go and cry in my bath whilst eating donuts. Psych, I don't do that anymore. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you tomorrow.